In this video we're going to talk about handling events, and an event is an action that's going to occur whenever a user interacts with your application. And it could also occur if there's a message from another application like Windows. VisualBasic.net, or actually Visual Basic years ago, became one of the first event-based programming languages, which means pretty much everything that happens has to happen as a result of an event. So events are pretty core to what goes on in VisualBasic.net. An event handler is code that reacts to an event. So when somebody clicks a button, an event is raised, and you can choose to write code that does something when that button is clicked, or you can choose not to do anything when that button is clicked. Well, there are literally dozens of events that can occur. And so we're just going to take a look at a couple, but pretty much the rest of your programming career in VisualBasic.net, you're going to get to know all the events, and you'll be writing code that reacts to those events. So there's actually two ways to find out what events are supported by a given form or a control within your application. And the first way is just to double click on the form, and when you do that, you see the code view. Now we've already taken a look at the code view before, but this time we're going to look at it in a different light. This time notice that there's this private sub form1, which happens to be the name of our form, and then an underscore load. And then there are some other words that come after that, and notice at the very end, handles mybase.load. Now don't worry about the mybase part, but basically what this statement is saying that this is a section of code that handles whenever the form first loads onto the screen. So by double-clicking within our design surface, we get to the default event for a given form or a given control. We'll do this again in just a moment so you get that concept down. There's a second way also. There's two little drop-down list boxes here at the top, and one tells you all what the classes or the actual objects that are on your form, or in this case the form itself. And then this side shows you all the methods, or rather all the events that can occur on that form or control. So if I wanted to see all the other events for form 1, all I got to do is drop down this list box, and I can see that there is a finalize, an initialize component, and a new. Now it just so happens in the case of form, there's really nothing here that is very exciting, so we're not going to add any new events to our code for the form. But let's go back to our designer surface and drag and drop a text box onto the surface. And now let's double click that text box. You'll notice by default the event is underscore text changed. So this event occurs whenever you type something into the text box. Now in most cases you may not need to know whenever somebody types a letter or a number into the text box. Other times, though, you may want to know that, so you can write code between the private sub start, this first line, and this end sub here. You can write code in the middle, and we'll do that in just a moment. But back to our original discussion about how do I know what other events are supported by text box 1, I can select text box 1 from my class dropdown, and then I can look at all of the events that are available here within the methods dropdown. So you can see there's quite a few that we can work with. You'll notice that the text changed is actually bold. That means that we've already written code for that event. So let's take a look at, let's say this one here with leave. This occurs whenever somebody either uses the tab key on their keyboard to move from the current text box to another control on the form, or if they were to use their mouse and leave this text box. So let's do this. Let's write some code in here. I'm going to type in messagebox.show, and then I'm just going to type in the word text changed, and this will let me know whenever this event fires. It'll pop up a little message box. Here we're going to do another one, messagebox.show, and this time we'll just put in the word leave. And let's go ahead here and put another message box to show whenever the form loads. Let's go ahead and save this. And now let's actually do one more thing. Let me add another control here. Let's add a button. And because whenever we want to leave this text box, we're going to have to leave and go somewhere. So we'll put the button there. Let's go ahead and run our application. And you'll notice, first of all, that the text change property pops up. And then form load. So you might be wondering, why was the first thing that happened that our text change event fired? Well, the reason was because in the properties it actually sets the default text to text box 1. So we can actually remove that from the properties window and we won't see that message again. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to select text box 1 and then scroll down to the text property, or up. There we go. And we'll just remove it. Now let's run the application again. When I do this time, notice that the first thing we get is form 1 load. Now let's type in a key into our text box. And when I do, notice that we get the text change event firing. And our event handler captured it and put up a message box. Great. And now I'm going to click the button, and when I do, notice that the leave event fires because we have left focus from this text box and went someplace else. But did you notice that nothing actually happened whenever we clicked our button? That's because even though the button click event is being raised to our application, we're choosing to ignore it. So this just illustrates again that you don't have to write code for every single event that occurs. You just have to handle the ones that are important to you and to your application. If we wanted to actually handle that, again, just one more time, what we can do is double click and notice that our button1_click event is the signature for that is actually created for us. And so I could do something like this. Let's type in another message box. .show button clicked. Or if we actually knew the full text for this event, we don't have to use either of those two ways. We can also type it in manually, but that's actually a pretty difficult route to go. But it's definitely possible if that's something that you want to do. If you were using Notepad and just the .NET Framework SDK and the Visual Basic compiler from the command line, then you would need to know this and need to type that out. Fortunately, Visual Studio.NET gives you tools where it generates a lot of code for you. This is just another case where that happens. So now let's run our code one more time and show that our button1_click event actually works. Form load, and now let me pull this over here into our viewing area. And I'm going to click the button. The first thing that happens is that our leave event is fired from our text box, and then the button clicked event occurred. So this brings up actually a very good point. You don't always know off the top of your head what order events are going to occur in, so you'll need to thoroughly test your applications whenever you're working with events. Make sure you understand these concepts because we'll be using events pretty much throughout the rest of our series of lessons, and it's such a fundamental concept that you need to understand it inside and out. Thank you.